Go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, thanks for stopping by, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, and I am TC, your host and commentator, founder, originator, showrunner, gopher, craft services, you name it, that's me. That is what I do. This is my show. This is my platform. And I do what I do because I love my republic and I love truth. And that means sometimes you have to call out people that you respect. That means you have to call out truthlessness or fabricated scenarios that are meant to drive an agenda, even when it's unpopular. And so I want to go back, almost 20 years. I have been listening to Joe Soucheray and the boys over at Garage Logic when they used to be on the radio. Now with their podcast, I tune in on a semi-regular basis. I find myself more often than not in great agreement with Joe on a lot of his common sense issues. He's definitely a man of garage logic. He tends to think like you, me, and your neighbors. And there are times I disagree with him as well. And I've never felt the need to call him out in an area where I disagree. But I do feel the need to call him out for some things he said on his episode of Garage Logic, and point out the hypocritical hypothetical that he created, in all of it because of his desire to really drive the narrative of the school resource officer debacle that's happening here in the state of Minnesota. Now, some of you saw my show with Stephen Lowell from a week ago, and almost 2 weeks ago. And tomorrow on my regular Monday night episode of TC and Friends Monday Night Musings, I'm going to be diving into some of the topic again of the SRO debacle here in the state of Minnesota, as I cover Sheriff Kevin Torgerson's most recent appearance on KROC AM, Conversations with the Sheriff. It's a once a month program that they have. And so we're going to be touching on that. But for this, we're going to touch briefly on some things that Joe has to say about the school resource officer situation. And we're going to touch a little bit on how Joe creates a scenario of his own imagination and then imposes that scenario onto the situation and talks about it as if this is the reality, like this is what's going to happen. And I'm just not okay with that, because if you've done any reading into this legislation that's passed, SROs are not restricted at all in how they respond to violent situations. They're not restricted at all in how they deal with threats of violence towards themselves, towards students, towards staff, or anything. And that's the narrative that's been, really kind of beaten over the heads of Minnesotans, especially, suburban and greater Minnesota individuals. Like that your kids are in danger because cops' hands are being handcuffed, if you will. And that's just not what's happening. There again, I'll put a link to my conversation with Stephen Lowell about this topic in this video so that you guys can see, when you read the law, it's not the fiasco that they're making it out to be. But here, we're going to listen to Joe. This is a fair use issue. We're going to listen to Joe and we're going to listen to his crew, and we're going to talk about it. So this is from the September 14th podcast, and these comments take place at about the 32-minute mark of the program.
Who does not want his name mentioned, and but I don't doubt a word he said. Do you know it's come to this? It's come to this. The officers outside of school are not school resource officers.
Right.
So theoretically, a school resource officer could witness today, God forbid, two kids attempting to kill each other in the hallway. He'd say, would you guys pause just a moment? I got to call a cop to come and break this up. And they might.
Okay, folks, if this is really what Joe believes, then in the officer, this amorphous imaginary officer who's having this response here sees two kids in a school attempting to kill each other, and his or her response is, okay guys, could you hold on a second, I need to go call officers from the outside. That person doesn't belong in law enforcement. Damn sure doesn't belong as an SRO. And nothing about the law prevents the officer from using reasonable force in this situation at all. But listen to how Joe portrays this.
I'd say to him, well, you are a cop. No, I'm a school resource officer. I can't really do much. Why don't you guys just quit trying to kill each other? I'm going to call a policeman.
Can you hang on a minute?
Can you hang on?
Law enforcement agencies that contract with schools to provide school resource officers do not put people in those positions that are not post-certified officers, Joe. They're law enforcement officers. They're peace officers in the state of Minnesota. They're never going to go, hey, I'm not a cop in this capacity. I'm just a school resource officer. They're still cops. They still have the ability to act and conduct themselves as law enforcement or peace officers in the state of Minnesota. You're hyping this up, Joe. You're hyping this up with the intent, purpose of driving fear into your audience because you're so narrow-minded on this. You hate the left so much, and rightly so, but you hate the left so much that you believe that this is geared towards stripping law enforcement of their ability to intervene, and nothing in this law does that.
Can you hang on? Can you interrupt this for just a moment? And then he gets on his shoulder microphone and says, yeah, I need help here in school ABC. I got two fighters in the hallway and I can't really do much about it. Then you'd have to hope they didn't kill each other before a cop arrived who was not bound by this legislative language.
Not to be that guy, but
I know that well, we'll just let this go on.
But is that true that SROs are not police officers?
Oh, they're police officers, but once inside the school, they're bound by this new legislative law,
which I see what you're saying. I'm sorry.
Which they hold in suspicion.
I misunderstood what you said.
They don't trust.
No, see, this is the thing. That's not true. That's not true. This is hype by several organizations. The MPPOA, Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association. It's the Minnesota Sheriff's Association. It's several other organizations. It's the individual sheriff's offices and the individual police agencies that are driving up the hype on this. That's what this is. This is hype. And some agencies have responded well to this and said, no, we believe that we can respond. And others are out there driving this fear mongering into the public narrative because of the hatred between the left and the right. And Joe's bought into it. And now he's got his boys, his entourage, the Garage Logic entourage, are sitting there going, yep, Yep, that's right. That's what's going to happen. Yep, that's what's going to happen. It's not going to happen. That's not what's going to happen. And any cop whose response is this is no cop. Well, or maybe they are when you look at him in light of Uvalde and how the Uvalde officers responded. But this is what's wrong when we have blind allegiance to one particular group of people in society that we deem to be heroes. Everything they tell you about a situation must be true. Therefore, I have to have this view. And Soucheray's bought into it hook, line, and sinker. It's actually disappointing. It's terribly disappointing to see Soucheray fall for this.
Our current breed of attorney general and governor and
Okay.
these radical ideologues in the legislature, all of whom would throw a cop under the bus before anyone else.
Right.
They're all devoted, remember, to being anti-police, no matter what they say now. Their background is anti-copper. So now a cop, that's not far-fetched. A cop might have to, a school resource cop might have to call an outside cop to come in.
No, it is far-fetched, Joe. It is far-fetched. This is the machinations of your imagination because how much you hate the Mysterians. And I get it. I hate the Mysterians too. But you don't get to play fast and loose with an officer's duty to intervene in a deadly force situation. You don't get to do that. It's just like the people out there saying, well, now the cops aren't going to be able to do anything if somebody comes in blazing a gun. That's just hogwash. That's hogwash. This is the argument of a weak-minded, low IQ, low info individual who's hell-bent on backing a particular perspective. And I respect the Garage Logic crew. I really do. I don't respect this because this is the fear-mongering. This is the hype. This is the danger when we play this as a left versus right or all cops are bastards versus cops are all heroes narrative. No respectable school resource officer with any level of integrity would stand by and say, well, the way the law reads, I just can't intervene. That's stupid. It's absolutely stupid.
That's a very real possibility.
No, it's not, Joe.
In
not.
In the schools where there are still school resource officers present, although there are few now. There are few schools with school resource officers in them because they don't know what the hell they can do.
Hogwash. Hogwash. You've bought the narrative. You've bought the narrative. And so have so many of the supposedly conservative Republican legislators who are out there beating this war drum. I'm going to ask you this. Conservative Republican members of the House during the education omnibus hearing, where were you on this legislation? Where were you? Why weren't you making a bigger deal out of this during that time? And don't tell me, well, I did bring it up. No, why didn't you beat this damn war drum every single day from the moment it was proposed until a week and a half before school started? You were silent. All of you, every single one of you were freaking silent after this legislation passed. It's because this fits your narrative. It fits your agenda. It keeps you guys in the struggle for left versus right. That's why we're not hearing from you. That's because this has come down to left versus right, Republican versus Democrat. And you guys want that struggle. You want that struggle. The Republican minority in the state of Minnesota right now loves this struggle because it helps them be able to hype and say, look at how much the Democrats hate you. And the Democrats love their trifecta, their triumvirate of power between the House, the Senate, the courts, and the executive branches. They love it because they're winning. And the Republicans love the fact that the Democrats are winning because they get to play the victims and they get to do fear-mongering. And guys like Joe Soucheray, who normally has a very measured and reasonable response to these situations, is buying into the fear-mongering and now has become a propagandist for the fear-mongering. This is hogwash.
Do we know what percentage of the public schools?
I don't know.
I had the list yesterday. It's outrageous.
Quite a few schools do not currently have SROs.
I might have found it on Channel 11's website.
We're going to stop with the comments there. And I'm just going to say, to quote Joe, this is B as in B, S as in S. Joe's position on this, Joe's hypothetical situation where there's two students about to kill each other and a school resource officer who is a licensed police officer in the state of Minnesota says, well, hold on now, stop fighting so I can call somebody to help me break you guys up. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And the agencies that have chosen to pull their cops out of schools as resource officers are doing so because they're doing it for the power. They're doing it to drive the wedge of fear into the people. This is a political play on both parts, a political play. And Joe Soucheray and crew over at Garage Logic are getting this wrong. They're getting this wrong. And like I said, any cop whose response to a situation like that is, oh, well, I'm too worried about what's going to happen to me to intervene in you, should be no cop. Should be no peace officer. They should immediately lose their job. In fact, they should immediately be imprisoned for failure to act. End of story. We have got to stop beating the drum that all cops are bastards or all cops are heroes. That's it. They're not. Not all cops are bastards and not all cops are heroes. In fact, I don't believe the majority are bastards and I don't believe the majority are heroes. To be a hero, you have to do something heroic in the moment. And if in the moment, in this situation, you see this happening and you choose to do nothing because you're more afraid about what could happen to your career or whether or not you go to jail, that's not you being a hero in an everyday role as an SRO. That's you being a coward looking for a soft, cushy job and wanting to know that all the protections are always going to apply to you no matter what you do at all times, which is what we call qualified immunity, which needs to be stripped from every single public sector employee and every single public servant, elected, appointed, or assigned, period. And that's the thing about this. No matter what, public sector public servants like SROs will have qualified immunity and they will not face prosecution if they are doing a job wherein they are required to help or save somebody. And Soucheray knows this. So does the rest of the crew at Garage Logic, but they want to hype up the fear porn to make a point. And so many of you normie cons out there who listen to Garage Logic and all these others, listen to every single member of the Minnesota House of Representatives and the Senate, and all the other Republicans and all the police unions. So many of you know that qualified immunity applies here. You know it will protect them. You know they're going to be okay, but you choose to go the fear porn route because you get off on it philosophically. Because you hate the left so much that you'll lie. You'll lie to win a point. That's not winning. And the scenario that Joe Soucheray concocted here is not going to happen. Everybody knows that. Until next time, fight for your liberty. It is yours. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. And sic semper, Tyrannus.
We are going for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at